The automatic doors of JFK International Airport slid open with a soft whoosh as 16-year-old Malik stepped inside, pulling his rolling suitcase behind him. His younger sister, Amara, just 14, walked beside him, her eyes wide with excitement, as she took in the bustling terminal around them. "Can you believe we're actually going to London?" Amara whispered, clutching her boarding pass like it was a golden ticket. "And in premium class, too." Malik smiled at his sister's enthusiasm. This was their first time flying anywhere without their parents, and definitely their first time in anything better than economy. Their father had surprised them with these tickets just 2 weeks ago, right after Malik's graduation ceremony. "For my graduate and my honor roll student," he had said with a proud grin. The siblings made their way through the crowded terminal, following the signs toward their gate. Malik checked his phone. They had plenty of time before their flight, but their dad had always taught them to arrive early. "Better safe than sorry," he had said during their goodbye that morning. As they approached the premium class check-in counter, Amara bounced slightly on her toes. She'd been looking forward to this trip for months. Their grandmother in London had been asking them to visit for years, and finally, everything had worked out perfectly. Summer break, no school commitments, and their parents finally comfortable, with them traveling alone. The check-in area was impressive with polished marble floors and soft lighting that made everything feel fancy. There were only a few people in line ahead of them, unlike the long crowds at the regular economy counters. Malik felt a small surge of pride as they joined the shorter line. This was definitely going to be an adventure to remember. Behind the counter stood a woman who looked to be in her 50s, with perfectly styled gray hair and a crisp uniform. Her name tag read Patricia Hamilton, Senior Gate Agent. She was helping a family of 4, a mother, father, and 2 young children, who were chattering excitedly about their vacation to Paris. "Have a wonderful trip," Patricia said warmly, to the family, handing back their documents with a genuine smile. "Your gate is B12, and boarding begins in about an hour." Malik and Amara stepped forward when their turn came, both of them polite and respectful as their parents had taught them. Malik placed their boarding passes and passports on the counter with a friendly smile. "Good morning," he said. "We're checking in for Flight 847 to London Heathrow." Patricia looked up from her computer screen, and something in her expression changed instantly. Her warm smile from moments before seemed to freeze and then fade entirely. Her eyes moved slowly from their faces to their boarding passes, then to their expensive luggage, matching black suitcases their father had bought specifically for this trip. "I see," she said, her voice noticeably cooler than it had been with the previous family. She picked up their boarding passes but didn't scan them. Instead, she held them up to the light, examining them closely as if looking for something wrong. Amara shifted uncomfortably beside her brother. The woman's entire demeanor had changed so dramatically that it was impossible not to notice. The friendly, helpful gate agent from just minutes before had been replaced by someone who seemed suspicious and unwelcoming. "Is everything okay?" Malik asked politely, though he was beginning to feel uneasy. He had never experienced anything like this before, but something about the situation felt very wrong. Patricia didn't answer immediately. She continued studying their boarding passes with exaggerated attention, turning them over multiple times and holding them at different angles. Behind Malik and Amara, other passengers began to line up, but Patricia seemed in no hurry to process their documents. "These premium class tickets," she finally said, looking directly at Malik with narrowed eyes. "Where did you get them?" The question caught him off guard. "My father bought them," he replied, confusion clear in his voice. "Is there a problem?" Patricia's eyebrows rose skeptically. "Your father bought premium class tickets for 2 unaccompanied minors?" Her tone suggested she found this highly unlikely. "That's quite expensive. Are you sure these aren't borrowed?" Amara's mouth fell open slightly. She looked at her brother, then back at Patricia, trying to understand what was happening. "Borrowed," she repeated quietly. "Ma'am," Malik said, working to keep his voice steady and respectful, "our father purchased these tickets directly from your airline's website. We have all the confirmation emails if you need to see them." But Patricia had already turned to her computer, clicking through screens with deliberate slowness. Every few seconds, she glanced back at the teenagers with that same suspicious expression, as if she expected them to confess to some crime. Meanwhile, the line behind them continued to grow. Malik could hear other passengers beginning to murmur impatiently. A businessman in an expensive suit checked his watch and sighed loudly. A family with young children started shifting restlessly. "This is taking quite a while," said a woman behind them. "Is there a problem?" Patricia ignored the comment entirely, continuing her unnecessarily thorough examination of their perfectly valid tickets. She had now been holding their documents for nearly 10 minutes, something that should have taken less than 2 minutes. "I'm going to need to verify these with my supervisor," Patricia announced finally, though she made no move to call anyone. Over. "Premium class tickets require special verification for certain situations." The way she said certain situations made Malik's stomach tighten with understanding. He had heard his parents talk about experiences like this, but he had never faced anything like it himself. He was a good student, polite, well-dressed, and had all the proper documentation. There was absolutely no reason for this treatment except for one obvious factor that he couldn't change. Amara moved closer to her brother, sensing his tension. "What's happening?" she whispered, though she was beginning to understand as well. "I'm not sure," Malik whispered back, though deep down, he was becoming very sure indeed. As if to confirm his suspicions, Patricia immediately processed the next family in line, a white couple with teenage children, without any delays or questions. She smiled warmly at them, scanned their documents quickly, and wished them a pleasant flight, all within 3 minutes. Then she returned to Malik and Amara's documents, picking them up once again as if seeing them for the first time. "Yes, I'm definitely going to need my supervisor to look at these," she said with artificial concern. "There's something about them that just doesn't seem right." Malik felt a wave of frustration and hurt wash over him. He had been raised to be respectful to adults and authority figures, but this was becoming impossible to ignore. They had done nothing wrong, had all the proper documentation, and were being treated completely differently than every other passenger. He pulled out his phone, thinking about the advice his father had given him before they left. "If anything ever feels wrong or unfair," his dad had said, "call me immediately. Don't try to handle it alone." As Patricia continued her charade of examining their tickets, Malik made a decision that would change everything. He was going to call his father, though he had no idea just how dramatically that phone call would impact everyone in the terminal. The morning that had started with such excitement and anticipation was about to become something none of them would ever forget. 25 minutes had passed since Malik and Amara first approached the counter. 25 long, uncomfortable minutes of watching Patricia shuffle their papers, type random things into her computer, and periodically glance at them with that same suspicious look. In that same time, she had processed at least 8 other families, all without a single question or delay. Amara's excitement about the trip had completely vanished. She stood close to her brother, fidgeting with the strap of her carry-on bag, and occasionally looking around at the other passengers who were now openly staring at them. Some people seemed annoyed by the delay, while others appeared curious about what was taking so long. A few had even started recording with their phones, though they tried to be discreet about it. "Excuse me," said a tall man in a business suit, who had been waiting behind them for the past 15 minutes. "Is there some kind of problem here? My flight board's in 30 minutes. Patricia looked up with an apologetic smile, the same warm expression she had shown everyone except Malik and Amara. "I'm so sorry for the delay, sir. We're just having a small technical issue with these particular tickets. I can help you at the next counter if you'd like." The businessman gratefully moved to another line, leaving the siblings alone with Patricia once again. "Technical issue?" Malik almost laughed at how ridiculous that sounded. There was nothing technical about what was happening here. "Ma'am," Malik said, trying one more time to reason with her. "Our boarding time is in 20 minutes. Could you please tell us exactly what the problem is? We have our confirmation numbers, our IDs, everything you should need." Patricia sighed dramatically, as if dealing with them was the most difficult part of her day. Young man, I understand you're eager to board, but premium class tickets require thorough verification, especially when—" She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Especially when the circumstances seem unusual." "What circumstances?" Amara spoke up for the first time, her voice small but determined. "We're just two kids going to visit our grandmother. What's unusual about that?" Instead of answering, Patricia picked up her phone and made a show of dialing an extension. "Mr. Davidson, could you come to gate 12, please? I have a situation that needs your attention." While they waited for this mysterious Mr. Davidson, Patricia continued to help other passengers. A young white couple with backpacks and casual clothes approached her counter. Their tickets were coach, not even premium, and they looked like college students who probably hadn't spent much money on anything. Patricia processed them in under 2 minutes, chatting pleasantly about their trip to Dublin and wishing them safe travels. Malik watched this interaction with growing anger. These students looked exactly like what they were, young people on a budget trip. Yet they received nothing but kindness and efficiency. Meanwhile, he and Amara, who were properly dressed, had expensive luggage, and valid premium tickets, were being treated like criminals. "This isn't right," Amara whispered to her brother. "Why is she being so mean to us?" Before Malik could answer, a stern-looking man in his 50s approached the counter. His name tag identified him as Robert Davidson, supervisor. He had the appearance of someone who took himself very seriously, with perfectly pressed clothes, and an expression that suggested he had already made up his mind about whatever situation he was walking into. "What seems to be the problem here, Patricia?" he asked, though his eyes were focused entirely on Malik and Amara. "These two young people are trying to board with premium class tickets," Patricia explained, handing him their boarding passes. "I've been trying to verify them, but something just doesn't seem right about the whole situation." Davidson took the tickets and gave them the same exaggerated examination that Patricia had been performing for the past half hour. He held them up to the light, checked the printing, and even ran his finger along the edges as if looking for signs of forgery. He said, frowning. "These do look questionable." Malik felt his frustration boiling over. "Sir, with all due respect, what exactly looks questionable about them? They're real tickets that my father bought from your airline's official website. We can show you the purchase confirmation, the credit card receipt, anything you need." Davidson's eyebrows rose at Malik's direct response. "Young man, I don't appreciate your tone. We're simply following standard protocol for premium class passengers." "Standard protocol?" Malik repeated, trying to keep his voice calm despite his growing anger. "Is it standard protocol to spend 30 minutes examining valid tickets? Because that's not what I've observed with any other passengers today." A small crowd had begun to gather around their gate area. Some passengers were recording the interaction on their phones, while others whispered among themselves about what they were witnessing. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Davidson seemed to realize that the situation was attracting unwanted attention. He moved closer to the counter and lowered his voice, though not enough to prevent Malik and Amara from hearing every word. "Look," he said, "I'm going to be honest with you. Premium class is, well, it's for a certain type of passenger, people who are accustomed to that level of service. Maybe your parents made a mistake with the booking, or maybe there was some kind of mix-up. But I think you'd be much more comfortable in economy class." The words hit Malik like a physical blow. There it was, the real reason for all the delays and suspicion. Not because their tickets were invalid, not because of any technical issues, but because Davidson and Patricia didn't think they belonged in premium class. "A certain type of passenger?" Malik repeated, his voice getting louder despite his efforts to stay calm. "What type would that be exactly?" Davidson's face flushed slightly, realizing he had said too much. "I simply meant that premium class has certain expectations, certain standards." "What standards?" Amara interrupted, surprising everyone, including herself. "We're dressed nicely, we have our tickets, we've been polite to everyone. What standards aren't we meeting?" Several passengers in the gathering crowd murmured in agreement. A woman with gray hair shook her head in disgust. A father traveling with his own teenage children looked appalled by what he was witnessing. Davidson, clearly flustered by the attention, tried to regain control of the situation. Listen, I'm trying to help you here. I can get you seated in economy class on the same flight. You'll still make it to London, just in different seats. That's a reasonable solution. No, Malik said firmly. That's not a reasonable solution. We have premium class tickets that my father paid for, and we have every right to use them. The only unreasonable thing here is the way you've been treating us for the past 30 minutes. Davidson's expression hardened. I'm afraid I'm going to have to insist. Company policy requires us to verify premium class tickets when there are irregularities, and I'm not comfortable approving these particular tickets. What irregularities? Malik demanded. Please, explain to everyone here exactly what irregularities you see. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Davidson glanced around at the crowd of passengers, many of whom were now openly recording the confrontation. He was trapped between his obvious bias and the growing public attention to his actions. That's when Malik made the decision that would change everything. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to his father's contact information. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear but from anger and frustration at the injustice of the situation. I'm calling my father, he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. He's going to want to speak with whoever's in charge here, Davidson scoffed. Son, I don't know what you think your father can do about company policy, but he stopped talking when he saw the look of determination in Malik's eyes. Something about the teenager's confidence made him pause. Most kids in this situation would be crying or backing down by now. But Malik looked like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. As Malik hit the call button, neither Davidson nor Patricia had any idea that they were about to face the most difficult conversation of their professional careers. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Hey son, how's everything going? Are you and Amara at the gate yet? Malik's father, Dr. Jonathan Williams, was sitting in his corner office on the 47th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. Through his floor-to-ceiling windows he could see the busy streets of New York's financial district far below. He had been reviewing some important documents when his phone rang, and he was expecting to hear that his children had boarded their flight safely. Dad, Malik said, his voice tight with frustration, we have a problem. Dr. Williams immediately sat up straighter in his leather chair. He knew his son well enough to recognize when something was seriously wrong. What kind of problem? Are you both okay? We're fine, but they won't let us board the plane. The gate agents are saying our premium class tickets are fake or something. They've been holding us here for almost 40 minutes now. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted only a few seconds, but it felt much longer to Malik. When his father spoke again, his voice had changed completely. Gone was the casual, warm tone from moments before. In its place was something much colder and more dangerous. Put me on speaker, son. I want to talk to whoever is in charge there. Malik looked at Davidson, who was standing nearby with his arms crossed, looking annoyed by the whole situation. My father wants to speak with you. Davidson rolled his eyes. Listen, kid, I don't have time to talk to every upset parent. Your father can call our customer service line if he has complaints. Sir, Malik said firmly, I really think you should take this call. Something in the teenager's tone made Davidson pause. Against his better judgment, he reached for the phone. Fine, I'll talk to him for 1 minute, but this isn't going to change anything. Malik switched to speaker mode and held the phone between them. The crowd of passengers leaned in slightly, curious to hear this conversation that had been building for the past 40 minutes. This is Robert Davidson, gate supervisor, Davidson said in his most official voice. I understand you have concerns about our company policies. Mr. Davidson, came the calm, measured voice from the phone. This is Dr. Jonathan Williams. I understand that my children are being prevented from boarding their flight, despite having valid tickets that I personally purchased from your airline. Davidson's expression showed he wasn't impressed by the title. Sir, we're simply following standard verification procedures for premium class passengers. Your children's tickets require additional authentication, and we're not comfortable approving them at this time. I see, Dr. Williams replied, his voice remaining perfectly controlled. And what specific concerns do you have about tickets that were purchased directly from your airline's website with my personal credit card? Well, Davidson said, glancing around at the watching crowd, Premium class travel is expensive, and when we see unusual circumstances, we have to be careful. Unusual circumstances, Dr. Williams repeated slowly. Could you elaborate on what you find unusual about two well-behaved teenagers with proper documentation traveling to visit their grandmother? Davidson's face was starting to turn red. H. was beginning to realize that this conversation wasn't going the way he had expected. Sir, I don't think you understand the situation here. These tickets just don't seem legitimate for passengers like your children. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Several passengers in the crowd gasped audibly. Someone whispered, "Oh no, he did not just say that." The phones recording the interaction moved closer to capture every word. Passengers like my children, Dr. Williams repeated, his voice still eerily calm. Mr. Davidson, are you saying that my children don't look like the type of people who should be flying in premium class? Davidson realized he had walked into a trap, but it was too late to back out now. I'm just saying that we have to be careful about verifying tickets when the circumstances seem out of the ordinary. Out of the ordinary, Dr. Williams said, because my children are black. The silence that followed was deafening. Davidson's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Patricia, who had been standing nearby trying to look busy, suddenly found herself the center of attention as Dr. Williams continued. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Dr. Williams said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. You've detained my children for 40 minutes, questioned the validity of their legally purchased tickets, and suggested they don't belong in premium class, all because you don't think black teenagers should be flying in the front of the plane. Is that an accurate summary? Now wait just a minute, Davidson sputtered. That's not what I said. You're twisting my words. We have policies and procedures that we have to follow, and do these policies require you to spend 40 minutes examining the tickets of black passengers while processing white passengers in under 2 minutes? Dr. Williams interrupted. Because that's exactly what my son has described to me. Davidson looked around desperately for support, but found none. The crowd of passengers was clearly on the family's side. Patricia had backed away from the counter, suddenly very interested in some paperwork. Even the other airline employees in the area seemed to be avoiding eye contact. Sir? Davidson said, trying one last time to maintain control. I don't know who you think you are, but you can't just call here and demand special treatment. We have rules that apply to everyone equally. That's when Dr. Williams said something that made Davidson's blood run cold. Mr. Davidson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Let me properly introduce myself. I'm Dr. Jonathan Williams, CEO and founder of Williams Financial Group. Perhaps you've heard of us. Davidson's face went white. Even if he hadn't heard the name before, the way Dr. Williams said it made it clear that this was someone important. Very important. Williams Financial Group, Dr. Williams continued, currently holds a significant investment stake in several major airlines, including yours. We've been involved in financing your recent fleet expansion and route development. I also happen to sit on your board of directors. The phone seemed to get heavier in Davidson's hands. Around him, passengers were recording every word of what was quickly becoming the worst day of his professional life. But more importantly than any of that, Dr. Williams continued, his voice growing harder. I'm a father whose children are being discriminated against in your terminal, and that is completely unacceptable. Davidson tried to speak, but no words came out. He looked at Patricia, who was now openly backing away from the situation. He looked at the crowd of passengers, all of whom were staring at him with expressions ranging from disgust to amazement. Now, Dr. Williams said, I'm going to give you exactly 30 seconds to apologize to my children and process their boarding passes. And then I'm going to make some phone calls that will ensure this never happens to any family again. Davidson's hands were shaking as he reached for Malik and Amara's tickets. But Dr. Williams wasn't finished. Actually, on second thought, I don't think 30 seconds is enough time for you to fully understand the gravity of this situation. Let me call a few people who can help explain it to you. As Dr. Williams began dialing another number, Davidson realized that his world was about to change forever. What had started as a routine day of enforcing what he thought were reasonable policies was about to become a career-ending nightmare that would be talked about for years to come. The phone in Davidson's hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds as he waited to see who Dr. Williams was calling next. Dr. Williams didn't waste any time. While Davidson stood frozen holding the phone, Dr. Williams was already dialing a number that would change everything happening at JFK Airport that morning. "Richard, it's Jonathan Williams," he said calmly into his office phone while still connected to Davidson on speaker. "I need you to conference into a call immediately. We have a serious situation at JFK involving my children and your airline staff." Davidson's eyes widened when he heard the name Richard. There was only one Richard important enough for Dr. Williams to call directly: Richard Hawthorne, the CEO of the entire airline. Davidson had never even been in the same room as the CEO, let alone spoken to him directly. Within 30 seconds, a new voice joined the speakerphone conversation. "Jonathan, what's going on? I was just about to head into a board meeting." "Richard, I'm going to put you on speaker with one of your gate supervisors. My 16-year-old son Malik and 14-year-old daughter Amara are being denied boarding on Flight 847 to London, despite having valid premium class tickets. They've been detained for nearly an hour based on what can only be described as racial discrimination." The silence that followed was so complete that everyone in the gate area could hear it. Richard Hawthorne's voice, when it came back, was sharp and focused. "Put me through to whoever's in charge at that gate immediately." Davidson's hands were shaking as he realized he was about to speak directly to the CEO of his company. Around him, the crowd of passengers had grown even larger. People were pulling out their phones not just to record, but to call their friends and family. This was quickly becoming the kind of story that would be shared around the world. "This is Robert Davidson, gate supervisor at JFK," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Davidson," came Hawthorne's voice through the speaker, "explain to me exactly what's happening at your gate and why Dr. Williams's children haven't been allowed to board their flight." Davidson looked around desperately, as if hoping someone else would answer for him. Patricia had completely disappeared from the area. The other airline employees were suddenly very busy with other tasks, avoiding any eye contact with him. "Well, sir," Davidson stammered, "we were just following standard procedures for verifying premium class tickets. When circumstances seem unusual, we have to be extra careful." "Unusual?" Hawthorne interrupted. "What exactly is unusual about two teenagers with valid tickets and proper identification?" Well, they're just..." Davidson couldn't find the words to explain his actions without admitting to the discrimination that was now obvious to everyone listening. While Davidson struggled to speak, Dr. Williams had been making another call from his office phone. "Margaret, I need you to conference into this call immediately. We have a serious operational issue at JFK that requires your immediate attention." Margaret Chen, the airport's general manager, had been in a routine staff meeting when her emergency phone rang. When she heard Dr. Williams' name, she immediately took the call. Dr. Williams wasn't just any board member. His company was one of the airport's largest partners in their recent expansion projects. "Dr. Williams, what can I do for you?" Margaret's voice came through clearly as she joined the conference call. "Margaret, we have a discrimination incident happening at Gate 12 right now. My children are being denied boarding based solely on their race, and I need this resolved immediately." Margaret's response was swift and decisive. "I'm on my way to Gate 12 right now. This is completely unacceptable." As the call continued, Davidson found himself facing something he had never experienced before: consequences for his actions. Throughout his career, he had gotten away with treating certain passengers differently because no one had ever been important enough to challenge him. But now he was on a speaker phone call with the CEO of his company, the airport's general manager, and one of the most powerful businessmen in New York. "Mr. Davidson," Hawthorne's voice cut through his thoughts, "I want you to listen very carefully. You are going to immediately process Dr. Williams' children's boarding passes and ensure they receive the highest level of service. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir, absolutely," Davidson said quickly, reaching for Malik and Amara's tickets with trembling hands, but Dr. Williams wasn't finished. "Actually, Richard, I think we need to take this a step further. This isn't just about my children anymore. This is about making sure this never happens to any family again." "I completely agree," Hawthorne replied. "What are you thinking? Want all departing flights from this terminal temporarily suspended until we can properly address this situation and ensure your staff understands that discrimination will not be tolerated?" The words hit the gate area like a bomb. Passengers who had been casually listening suddenly realized they were witnessing something much bigger than a simple boarding dispute. Flights being suspended because of discrimination? This was unprecedented. "Consider it done," Hawthorne said without hesitation. "Margaret, can you coordinate the operational suspension?" "Already on it," Margaret replied. "All departing flights from Terminal 4 are being held effective immediately." Within minutes, the announcement echoed throughout the entire terminal. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a temporary operational suspension. All departing flights are currently on hold. We apologize for any inconvenience and will provide updates as soon as possible." The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Thousands of passengers suddenly stopped what they were doing to listen to the announcement. Gate areas that had been busy with boarding procedures came to a complete halt. Flight attendants and pilots looked around in confusion. Operational suspensions of this magnitude almost never happened unless there was a serious security threat. Davidson stood at his counter, still holding Malik and Amara's boarding passes, watching his entire world collapse around him. The crowd of passengers at his gate was now openly pointing at him and talking about what they had witnessed. Several people were already posting videos on social media with captions like, "Racist," "Gate agent causes entire airport to shut down," and "Watch what happens when discrimination meets real power." "Mr. Davidson," came Dr. Williams's voice through the phone, "I want you to understand something very clearly. What you did to my children today wasn't just wrong. It was a representation of systemic problems that exist throughout your industry. You treated them as less than human simply because of their skin color." Davidson wanted to protest, to claim that wasn't what happened, but the evidence was overwhelming. Dozens of witnesses had watched him process other passengers quickly while subjecting Malik and Amara to unnecessary scrutiny. The recordings would show exactly what had transpired. "Sir," Davidson managed to say, I was just doing my job." "No." Dr. Williams replied firmly, "You were abusing your position to discriminate against children, and now you're going to face the consequences." At that moment, Margaret Chen arrived at the gate with a team of senior airport officials and airline executives. She took one look at the scene, Davidson holding the boarding passes, the crowd of recording passengers, Malik and Amara standing quietly beside their luggage, and immediately understood the gravity of the situation. "Mr. Davidson," she said, in a voice that carried authority throughout the gate area, "you're relieved of duty effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises." As airport security approached Davidson, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in for everyone watching. A routine case of discrimination had escalated into something that would be talked about for years to come. Flights were suspended, executives were flying in from around the country, and the entire incident was being recorded and shared around the world. But for Malik and Amara, standing quietly in the middle of this chaos, the most important thing was knowing that their father had heard them, believed them, and used his power to ensure they were treated with the respect and dignity they deserved. 2 hours later, Gate 12 at JFK Airport looked completely different than it had that morning. What started as a routine boarding area had been transformed into the center of one of the most significant discrimination cases in aviation history. Malik and Amara sat in the airline's luxury lounge, still trying to process everything that had happened. They had been upgraded to the airline's most exclusive first-class suite, complete with personal flight attendants and every amenity imaginable. But more importantly, they had learned something powerful about standing up for themselves and the impact one phone call could have when it came from the right person. Dr. Williams had flown in personally from Manhattan, arriving at the airport within an hour of his phone call. He wasn't just there as an angry father. He was there as a man who understood that this moment was bigger than just his family's experience. "Dad," Malik said as his father sat down beside them in the lounge, I can't believe all of this happened because of us. Dr. Williams smiled and put his arm around his son. This didn't happen because of you, son. This happened because of people like Davidson who think they can treat others poorly without consequences. You and your sister did absolutely nothing wrong. Amara looked up at her father with wide eyes. Are we really the reason they stopped all the flights? You're the reason we finally addressed a problem that should have been fixed long ago, Dr. Williams explained. Sometimes it takes a dramatic moment to create real change, and change was exactly what was happening throughout the terminal. Richard Hawthorne, the airline's CEO, had arrived from corporate headquarters with a team of executives. Margaret Chen had mobilized every senior airport official. Together, they were implementing immediate reforms that would affect how passengers were treated, not just at JFK, but at airports around the world. In a conference room overlooking the terminal, an emergency meeting was taking place. Representatives from the airline, the airport authority, civil rights organizations, and media outlets had gathered to discuss what would happen next. This incident has exposed serious flaws in our training and oversight, Hawthorne admitted to the group. We're implementing immediate changes, starting with mandatory bias training for every employee who interacts with passengers. Dr. Williams sat at the head of the table, not as an angry customer, but as a leader who saw an opportunity to create lasting change. Training is good, but it's not enough. We need systems that prevent this from happening in the first place. Over. The next hour, they developed a comprehensive plan. Every discrimination complaint would be investigated by an independent review board. Employees found guilty of bias would face immediate termination. Most importantly, they would establish a scholarship fund to help underprivileged young people experience travel and see the world beyond their neighborhoods. Meanwhile, the story was spreading far beyond JFK Airport. The videos recorded by passengers had gone viral on social media. News outlets were picking up the story. Talk shows were booking Dr. Williams for interviews. What had started as two teenagers trying to board a plane had become a national conversation about discrimination and accountability. Patricia, the gate agent who had started the whole incident, had quietly resigned before she could be fired. She released a statement through her lawyer claiming she was just following procedure, but the evidence was too clear for anyone to believe that excuse. Davidson, on the other hand, was escorted from the airport by security and immediately terminated. His actions had cost the airline millions of dollars in delayed flights, negative publicity, and emergency response costs. More than that, his discrimination had exposed systemic problems that the company now had to address publicly. But the most powerful moment came when Dr. Williams brought Malik and Amara back to Gate 12, where a small crowd of passengers was still waiting for their rescheduled flights. Many of these people had witnessed the entire incident, and they broke into spontaneous applause when they saw the family return. I want to thank everyone who stood up and spoke out today, Dr. Williams said to the crowd. It would have been easy to look away or pretend this wasn't happening, but you chose to be witnesses, and that made all the difference. An elderly woman approached them with tears in her eyes. I've been traveling for 40 years, and I've seen this kind of treatment too many times. Today was the first time I saw it actually stopped and punished. Thank you for not backing down. A young father traveling with his own teenage children shook Dr. Williams's hand. My kids watched everything that happened today. They learned something important about justice and standing up for what's right. As the afternoon continued, Malik and Amara finally boarded their flight to London. But this wasn't just any flight anymore. The airline had assigned their best crew, and the captain personally welcomed them aboard over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain announced as they prepared for takeoff, we have some very special passengers with us today. Malik and Amara Williams showed incredible courage and dignity in the face of discrimination. They've helped make our airline better, and we're honored to have them flying with us. The entire plane erupted in applause. Passengers turned to smile at the teenagers who were still processing how much their day had changed. What started as a vacation trip to see their grandmother had become a lesson in justice and the power of speaking up against wrong. As the plane lifted off from JFK, Dr. Williams called his children from his office in Manhattan. How are you feeling about everything that happened today? Honestly, Dad, Malik replied. I'm still kind of shocked. This morning I was just a kid trying to get on a plane. Now I feel like we actually changed something important. You did change something important, his father confirmed. But remember, this is just the beginning. Real change takes time and constant effort. What happened today matters, but only if we keep working to make sure it never happens again. Amara leaned into the phone. Dad, will other kids have to go through what we went through? Some might, Dr. Williams answered honestly. But now they'll know they have rights, and they'll know that speaking up can make a difference. You've shown other young people that they don't have to accept discrimination silently. 6 months later, the changes implemented because of that day at JFK had spread throughout the aviation industry. The Williams Foundation, established with funds from the legal settlement, had already sent 50 underprivileged teenagers on educational trips around the world. Bias training had become mandatory at major airports nationwide. Most importantly, discrimination complaints were being taken seriously and investigated properly. Malik and Amara's story became part of civil rights education in schools around the country. Their courage in the face of discrimination and their father's response showed a new generation that injustice doesn't have to be accepted just because it comes from people in authority. But perhaps the most meaningful change was personal. Malik and Amara had learned that they had value and dignity that no one could take away from them. They had learned that speaking up against injustice wasn't just their right, it was their responsibility. Years later, when people asked Dr. Williams about that day at JFK, he would always say the same thing. My children taught me something important that day. They showed me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept being treated as less than human. Everything else, the phone calls, the meetings, the changes, that all came after. But it started with 2 brave kids who knew they deserved better and weren't afraid to say so. The discrimination at Gate 12 had lasted less than an hour, but the changes it created would last forever.